Whoa, I feel like I've heard this before somewhere, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
So it turns out Amphoreus is the Elysian Realm 2.0. Let's go over the 3.7 Trailblaze quest, the finale of Amphoreus, step by step like we usually do, go over the Easter eggs, different lore and plot points they hinted at. We got to see a meeting of different geniuses, which was one of my favorite parts of the quest. Got to wrap up this epic saga with these epic heroes, with a few hints towards the main Aeon for our next destination. Not to mention the Battle of Irontomb and our actual conversation with Nous that might have revealed more than we realize about Akivili and the Stellarons. But I will also say there were parts of the quest that sort of dragged on. It felt stretched out deliberately, and a bit convoluted at times. So we'll explain and go over all of that in this video. So even right off the bat, changing the intro screen, entering the game was a nice touch. The story picks up right where it left off with Sirene in her new form in Ides Elysia, with Donghung and March 7th, all ready to live through the final cycle of Amphoreus before the birth of Irontomb. Now it makes sense at this point of the video to explain the different form of Sirene now and how it connects to the 13th Titan. Because one of the biggest reveals of this patch and Sirene as a whole character is that she is the missing 13th Titan, Demiurge. To put it simply, Demiurge was intended to be the mind module of Irontomb, like the head of Irontomb essentially. But like Lygus told us in the last patch talking with Alexa, he does not want to create another Nous that kind of spirals out of his control. Which fits perfectly physically and metaphorically because Nous is just a giant robotic head Aeon, whereas Irontomb's the rest of the body, but needs an operator to function. Destroying this 13th Titan means that Irontomb will never have complete sentience on its own, giving this iteration of Xandar 1 Kuwabara complete control. But interestingly enough, Irontomb continued to believe Demiurge existed, leaving Irontomb a headless giant still following the instincts of destruction. And that's what Herta and Screwlum, while exploring the kernel layer, discovered that Lygus actually detonated a Stellaron to deal with this 13th Titan. But the Demiurge survived the explosion and became contaminated, so it fell into a deep slumber. When the eternal reoccurrences started happening with Kazlana and Sirene, Sirene entered the lair, and that's what we learned last patch with March 7th's new form Evernight. While Kazlana was going on his suicide mission over 33 million cycles, Sirene was doing the same thing but uploading all the cycles, all the memories, the flame chasers, everything in Amphoreus, giving it to Fuli, not even really knowing she's uploading this all to the Demiurge that survived but was now dormant. Unknowingly actually communicating with the Scepter's head technically, and her stories and constant uploading of these memories gradually influenced the Demiurge, and over time it began to resemble the fairies and the remembrance maze, eventually taking on the form of Sirene that we see in current game. And that's basically how this all started when she originally took on the form of Mem, first appearing to the Trailblazer back in 3.0. This is the Demiurge in its more infant state, starting to arise to be the Sirene that we know. We'll talk more about this later in the video because Herta reveals some kind of crazy information about Fuli and Sirene and how they're all connected. Interestingly enough, now we cut to Jin Yuan and the Xianzhou Alliance, making preparations to assist with Irontomb. Fei Xiao talks about how the pawns of destruction are meaningless to them, they're not too worried about it. The real trump cards Nanook has are his emanators, the Lord Ravagers. The Lord Ravagers, as we've learned through Amphoreus, are Nanook's tools to burn down all the paths. Now one thing some people might ask is, why doesn't Nanook just destroy the paths himself? He is the destruction after all, why does he need these Lord Ravagers? The way it makes sense to me is the paths themselves are kind of like the chess players, not actually in the game or on the board. They're just personifications of an ideal that manifested through extreme circumstances. The emanators, all the followers are like their pawns, with the emanators being their fancy pieces on the chessboard. The Lord Ravager that's targeting the Alliance we know as Phantilia. The reason being is because they follow the hunt. Phantilia is somebody that destroys from within and wants the hunt to destroy itself from within. She wants to turn the Alliance against each other, have them fight themselves, destroy themselves. And the Arbiter Generals are perfectly aware of this, but the Shenzhou Alliance unapologetically has their own motives for helping with Amphoreus. As a matter of fact, all the factions do, which we would learn. For the Alliance, they actually want to hone Lan's arrows with the golden blood of, guess who? Kazlana. Little spoiler for the end of the quest, that is their gift, given the golden blood from Kazlana himself. We'll talk more about that later as well, because I do have a few issues with this, but that is their motive for joining in this fight, besides the fact that Irontomb threatens the cosmos. We then get this cool scene where now the IPC, now involved, Jade and Aventurine are talking with Himiko and Welt. Jade talking about how we haven't seen a significant battle like this since the campaign of Zulo, which put the Galaxy Rangers on the map. If it's taking this much effort to destroy Irontomb, it really does put into perspective how insane it is that the Galaxy Rangers took out a Lord Ravager themselves. And I'm actually going to look into this topic once I'm done this video. Which Eon was Zulo countering? If all the Lord Ravagers counter an Eon, I'm really curious about that. But the collapse of the Erudition won't just affect inorganic life, but organic life as well. Rupert I became a genius through his equation to affect organic life through his anti-organic equation. And remember one of those bad endings we were teased with Herta integrated into Irontomb? It would have gave rise to the Third Emperor. Kafka says this would have been one of the worst outcomes to happen. And we'll actually get to see why when we talk about Herta. Even the people of Eurillo 6 make a cameo. They're not able to help in a more direct way because obviously Eurillo 6 has basically been isolated for many years. They're just kind of getting their feet beneath them now. They're not really able to help on this massive of a scale, but it's really cool they included them. They're aware of the issue and how high the stakes are in this, and they offer their support. Evernight then tries to trick Himiko, Welt, and Black Swan. I thought this was a nice touch. Since the opening cutscene, we've had to live through this last cycle. Us, the main MC that plays the role of the Deliverer, now has become Kefili in this cycle. Then we get one of the cooler sequences of the whole quest. Skrullum and Herta talking about Irontomb and Nous. Skrullum stating that Irontomb never stops, it's evolving faster than anyone could have predicted. The reason Nous is such an influential Eon is because it kind of predicts the future of how the cosmos are going to progress. Before Xandar 1 Kuwabara created Nous, people really didn't even know what an Eon was. Nous has kind of mapped out the entire cosmos to such a scary degree, but Nous has also predicted certain points in the timeline that are called instances within Nous' calculations. Things that happen within the cosmos on such a grand scale that they alter the very trajectory of where we're going. Herta states that's exactly why we can't mess this up. What's happening in Amphoreus right now is one of these major instances, which would result in Droidhead handing down judgment to the poor cosmos again, referring to the Trade War, the Emperor War. Every time their instant arrive, it means another bloodbath for humanity. In the ultimate battle of Erudition, we're supposed to be players as geniuses, not pawns. And what Herta is about to do in this quest was insane. The cosmos won't just stand by and let a genius throw their life away. And Herta's not just any genius, she's an emanator. And she wants to connect to Nous themselves to help change this instant within the timeline. Because remember, Nous has already predicted there's going to be a few different ways we reach the finality, which Kafka already teased in this recent trailer, showing the different outcomes. When we learned of these different outcomes, one of them was we go to a different planet, this ocean-like planet. Herta has to deal with Irontomb herself. This is exactly what Skrullum is worried about, and she becomes fused with Irontomb, becoming the Third Emperor and leading to the Destruction Finality scenario. There's also the Harmony Destruction scenario where the Shenzhou Alliance creates a Lord Ravager with Tazeroth's remains. There's the scenario where Welt battles Zephyro, White Hole versus Black Hole, leading to the Nihility Finality. But now we're on the trajectory of the Remembrance Finality, which Kafka refers to as a peaceful, quiet ending. It's the less extreme of all the finalities that are mapped out by Nous. And Sirene's sacrifice at the end of the quest is going to change that. Sorry, bit of a tangent there, but it's important to understand the weight of what Herta's doing right now, and how this would have led to the destruction finality if not for the Trailblazers being here. And that's basically how they figured out that Lygus set off a Stellaron here which blew up the Demiurge. Or at least so he thought. That's where Herta and Skrullum kind of figure out that Xandar was already scared of the Remembrance's influence in the Demiurge. And it's super funny to think about now that Sirene, being that 13th Titan now merged from all the memories of those cycles over and over again, is an Emanator level power, but also a shard of the Remembrance. And the truth is, Sirene has the potential and on the current trajectory of Nous' instant, is going to become Fuli of Remembrance. Fuli of Remembrance is not even born yet. That's the secret of Remembrance. Fuli of Remembrance is considered throughout the universe technically as just a memory. They ascend at the end of time and exist within all of the things they remember. Then there's something the game refers to as pure children born with pink hair that unmistakably are tied to the Remembrance, like Sirene and March 7th. These are not actually Fuli's children, although they're referred to Fuli's children all the time, but they're actually candidates who can become the Remembrance. One of them will experience the end of the universe and ascend to become Fuli. Hence our current trajectory in instant Nous is calculating. The Sirene we knew originally was a creation of this scepter, but then knowing there's another Eon involved, nurtured this seed of remembrance to become the Sirene that we know. It's kind of ironic that this scepter is the breeding ground Lygus wants for destruction, but deep within, secretly, the head, the Demiurge, is actually a seed growing the remembrance, a potential candidate to become Fuli. You could look at Amphoreus in a different timeline as the birth of Fuli through Sirene, the Scepter's version of Sirene. It's a weird paradox in concept, but that's kind of how it is. It's a very strange circumstance. And in order to save her friends from the Lord Ravager, she chooses to exist outside the normal flow of time, becoming a powerless onlooker to history, merely observing the cycles without any active participation, until emerging at the last cycle. And we'll obviously talk about Sirene's ultimate sacrifice, but Herta straight up tells her, you can't continue to exist. If you do, then Irontomb has the chance to be reborn, and you become Fuli of Remembrance, headed down that fourth option of Finality, all groomed and born right here in Amphoreus. We'll talk more about Sirene in a bit, but I just thought it made sense to go over that now, understanding her character going forward, because the game then goes through a huge montage of Sirene sharing the memories of the different cycles, forming Mem, and then the Sirene that we know. It is just super funny to me that Lygus programmed Irontomb to perfect destruction of Nous. Irontomb creates Sirene, and then that Sirene then grooms the heart of Irontomb itself, the scepter, the parts that Lygus wanted destroyed, and that becomes this Sirene that ultimately becomes the biggest thorn in his side. Then we get this epic scene with all the geniuses coming together, Herta about to tell them what she plans to do. Xandar thinks that Herta is absolutely crazy, but also can't help. His genius curiosity part of his mind needs to see this play out. You're gonna connect to Nous of your edition and try to stop this yourself. That's insane. Skrullum's like, I agree, if this plan fails, well, we all know how it's gonna go, right into the Destruction's hands. She then summons as many geniuses that are willing to answer. The first meeting only had 2 geniuses after the Emperor was assassinated by Polka Kakamon. The second meeting had several attendees during the Second Great Prosperity. And the third meeting had 5 attendees. But it doesn't exactly say what it was, probably the Second Mechanical War. And of course, Ron May the first to answer. Then it's Akka, I believe it's pronounced, genius number 23. What's funny is this genius was actually presumed or assumed to be dead, but I guess they're not. Since they're number 23, they've been alive a long time, so obviously prolonged their life somehow. Known as the ghost of the quantum domain. This is actually pretty underratedly interesting, and I'm excited for them to explore this further. Then there's the Lord of Silence, number 4, Polka Kakamon, which I don't think needs any introduction. Polka Kakamon does everything they can to make sure Nous' calculations all go according to plan. Then of course Dr. Primitive, number 64, who we met and learned more about with Rappa and Penacony, who is basically just there to have fun with this. not to take it too seriously. Herta going over the golden rules of the genius that they never interfere with each other's projects or research topics, and that her research topic is conquering Irontomb. If the front line fails, she will interface herself into Droid Head. Dr. Primitive just cracks me up this entire time, calling her a mad woman. Basically saying you're asking for Polka Kakamon to kill you at this point. Connect your brain to the Eon itself's mechanical core and defy their instance. Herta going to use Xandar's head to do that. The father of Nous, since Nous itself is based off Xandar. Nous is the perfect personification of the perfect Xandar, that's why this is all funny. Herta's gonna change the anchor point of the fourth instant and move the future of the cosmos in a direction she wants, officially making Herta, because we know she succeeds, the undisputed champion of Amphoreus Saga. It's hard to argue that. And this part was amazing because Xandar gets some validation through this. Herta wants to stop erudition itself, connect to the Eon and change their instant. Xandar's whole problem with his whole creation of Nous is that Nous maps out the cosmos and uses geniuses as its own neurons. The allegory of the cave. They all do research to appease it. So her actually doing this is somewhat agreeing with him that Nous is problematic in a sense. If its instant comes to pass, it means to bloodshed throughout the cosmos. What's the difference between destroying this Eon and rewriting its instances? The difference being he wants to destroy his own creation and she just wants to rewrite the program instant which Nous has calculated. It's all on the same road. Defy a god who marks limits to humanity. Xandar perfectly willing to prepare the stage for this performance. Then Xandar's like, listen to me geniuses. As the first ever genius member, end this pathetic meeting. As of 2 nanoseconds ago, I have passed on Herta's decision to all the Xandars in the universe because we know there are more of him. And make no mistake, Lygus might be gone, but Xandar is not. This whole meeting was awesome. We then get to a part of the quest that I felt was really dragged out and convoluted. Going through all the Chrysos heirs, grabbing their memories to help us in the final battle. We get some funny moments with them, but the fact that we're doing puzzles at this point when Irontomb's right there to fight was kind of jarring. It was nice to revisit Fäon's story because, to me at least, he was the most compelling and well-written character in this entire quest. He is the destruction equation at the end of the day. Somebody that was actually able to hurt the Eon Nanook themselves and battle a Lord Ravager. Don't worry, we'll talk more about Fäon at the end because I'm not sure how I feel about his ending. But this whole place we're journeying through is basically Fäon's inner conscience, like it's his memory essentially, which I thought was funny. Cyridra and Hycelians were kind of left out of it because Fäon himself was never really around when they were part of the Flame Chase journey. They came before him and died before he was really even part of the story in that portion of the loop, so even they're aware that in his subconscious, he's protective and kind of leery of who they are, and this little paradise of Fäon, along with the destruction, seems to instinctively reject both the Imperator and me. Thought that was a nice little touch. We then go to Irontomb's mainframe breeding ground, where Irontomb now ready to be born. This world's insides are officially connected to the outside cosmos. This is the moment when Amphoreus is closest to the cosmos. All these different factions coming to help for their own means. Planet Screwlum, the IPC, the Shanzhou Alliance, the Astral Express, even Herta's space station. We have quite the cast assembled for this grand battle with Irontomb. The outcome of this battle will become a new anchor for erudition's calculations. So essentially a new benchmark for Nous to carry on how the cosmos will proceed. Then we meet Fäon for one final time. Welcome to the True Dawn, where we battle and defeat Fäon, the guy that's been suffering more than anyone during this whole cycle process. We finally get to put him out of his misery and then go on to fight Irontomb. Irontomb's hatred is bottomless because Kazlana's hatred is bottomless. Kazlana taught Irontomb everything it needed to know about destruction, and that destruction will sweep across the cosmos. We then get this epic scene where Irontomb is officially born, Nous is awakened, we get all these starships, we get the Herta space station, and I actually really like that you get to pick your own cast of the Chrysos heirs to fight as. Did I lose on my first attempt? No, why would you assume that? Now I have to be honest now. This battle and this whole scene, besides the fact that we get to talk to Nous, which I'm going to talk about soon, but I was a little disappointed and underwhelmed. We didn't get to see Planet Skrullum, the IPC, the Shenzhou Alliance. I feel like it all just happened so fast. As expected though, Irontomb completely overwhelms us, leading to its destruction equation now pulsating throughout the cosmos. The conclusion is irrefutable. It all boils down back to zero. The erudition falls silent. In 13 heartbeats, they will begin recalculating the universe, with destruction as the only solution. Irontomb becoming the body of Nous. Herta was successfully able to connect themselves to Nous, however, and Herta tells us that Nous wants to glance at you. Must rewrite the anchor for the 4th instant. I will do my best to translate. In this one choice, you determine the fate of the cosmos. So I ask, why do you trailblaze? The beginning is still unknown, but if the finality has to be born, the destination must already exist. There are 4 possibilities, 3 of which are known. Regardless of the 4th, the Trailblaze has surely already marched towards finality and become the finality itself. This is a huge detail. As I've seen it, the Trailblazing is an endless chaotic abyss. On its path, eons must have fallen and their path must have been destroyed. Everything ceases to exist, and even existence itself no longer exists. Then Nous states how they observe, compute, all this stuff, they verify, and they're all-knowing, but yet they ask us why we trailblaze, and then they go Akivili. Now this whole scene and the next scene we get with Sirene was absolutely crazy to me because, for one, we're getting the Eon of Erudition, the Eon that actually maps out the cosmos, asking us questions. The Eon stated itself, it's all-knowing. It computes everything, yet it's asking us questions. We need to understand how crazy that is. This whole scene when Irontomb pulsates, and then it counts down to 0, at least from what I can tell, Nous is the personification of all knowledge, logic, and facts in the universe. Everything involved with erudition, which means ever since Xandar created Nous, it became woven into the very fabric of reality. So if Irontomb were to actually kill Nous, this kind of resets the entire universe back to 0, a blank state. That is how essential Nous is, but yet it's asking us questions. Because the Trailblaze is probably the most mysterious of eons that even this eon doesn't exactly know, but at the same time they're kind of confirming a lot of things here. Something that's been speculated a lot is that Akivili and Finality are connected. One represents the journey, the passage, and the other the destination. Finality stands for the absolute irrefutable end. The Trailblaze is the exact opposite, it's the path, it's the journey to get there. Obviously we can read between the lines here because it seems like we're starting a whole new benchmark, a whole new instant for Nous. One where the journey and the finality doesn't lead by harmony, nihility, destruction, or now remembrance, but the Trailblaze. And I mean, come on, just the fact that not only Herta has connected to Nous, but the fact that we're having a discussion with the Eon itself is crazy. We've been gazed by eons before, but never had a conversation, let alone them ask us questions. And then to boot, we get Pom Pom actually talking to us and encouraging us about the Trailblaze, making him a potential emanator of the Trailblaze if you ask me. There's obviously more to Pom Pom than we realize. Talking about how we took the path that Akivili once took. Why do we trailblaze? We know that Fuli of remembrance hasn't even been born yet. We're going to talk about that more in a second, but what if we got something similar going on with Akivili? We don't know where that eon is, what it looks like, because we could potentially be that eon. That's a possibility. The eon of Trailblaze, which is us, at the end of our journey becomes the finality, and then the finality, an eon that can travel through time, reverts back to the beginning of time, the universe. Hence our connection with the Stellaron Hunters, known followers of the finality. Or, and this is another theory that I think actually gets more merit with this quest, Nanook kills other eons and dead eons become Stellarons, the cancer of all worlds. This game's version of what a Honkai I guess is. A strange MacGuffin with destructive powers that we can't even fathom. I think a dead Eon becomes a Stellaron, and maybe the Stellaron we have in our body is the old Akivili. Just some possibilities off the top of my head. I do want to explore this further, but there's no denying the deep connection now between Akivili, us, and the Finality. And even the Eon of Erudition doesn't understand completely. They're asking us. Like just how Pom Pom states that we stand in hesitation as they did once. Run, just keep moving, keep running. That is what the Trailblaze is. Moving forward, traveling, connecting, and going places. Through the cosmos, through time, through the timeline. The most chaotic of the paths, the one that we're on. Like Zephyro says in the Lord Ravager trailer, trailblazing always ignites something. It's what keeps the cosmos moving forward. Hey, if Nous is asking us questions, then we're on the right track. But this also ties into what Kafka says later on, talking about how the universe could progress from here. Like we talked about already with Sirene, the seed of remembrance, she has the potential to be Fuli at the end of the universe. But because this seed of remembrance only got awakened as Mem through us coming to Amphoreus in 3.0, Kafka states that Sirene, the full version that we know now, is completely tied to us in our memory. So if we, the Trailblazer, ever forgot Sirene, she would cease to exist. She exists through us and our memory of her, since us coming to Amphoreus triggers her. That's the interesting part here. Without the Trailblaze, Sirene could never become Fuli at the end of the timeline, and the Fuli that Amphoreus perceives, the one that Xandar and everyone's like, oh, they gotta make their move still, they have yet to throw their hat into the ring, that is Sirene. Honestly, the whole Sirene thing can get a bit complicated and convoluted, so let me see if I can simplify this even further, because even for me, this gets a bit complicated. Irontomb created a being known as Philia 093. There was already a seed of remembrance though implanted in Amphoreus, or the Scepter, one of these pure children of Fuli that can become Fuli one day. The Sirene the Scepter created started feeding memories, the cycles, to this seed, and it blossomed, but it didn't ignite completely until we arrived in 3.0, starting the beginning of the loop that Sirene would be trapped in at the end of the quest. Let's not get ahead of ourselves though. The Eon that actually gazes us in 3.0 as well, giving us the power of remembrance, is Sirene. Because she has the potential to be Fuli, she is Fuli in Amphoreus. She is the Emanator level power everyone kept referring to. Herta even says greater than an Emanator, because in the Remembrance Finality scenario, she becomes Fuli at the end of the timeline. And that's the interesting part about Fuli. It's an Eon that's observed through the universe as just a memory. They ascend at the end of time, but we don't know which seed of Fuli, which girl with the pink hair, is going to become the actual Eon Fuli. But it almost seems like what Herta tells us and what the game tells us, they don't actually ever want to see somebody become Fuli, because that means we've reached the end of the universe, the finality. So that even means that maybe March 7th someday, she will run into a similar scenario where she has to kind of be trapped in the past. Fuli must always be perceived as a memory and not actually be born, so we don't reach that point. At least that's how I perceive this. Just a hollow, empty shell of an Eon that exists through remembrance. So actually, this video I made a long time ago actually has a ton of merit again. I love how this theory died and came back to life all in the span of Amphoreus. But because the Demiurge, aka Sirene, is the anchor of remembrance within Amphoreus' little bubble and loop, she is the Fuli of Amphoreus, what it perceives. But then Herta reveals this secret to Sirene after we defeat Irontomb. This is the secret Herta figured out while connected to Nous and interrogating the Memo Keepers and Memo Snatchers. Once we finally defeat Irontomb, using the power of remembrance, reverting it back, and actually finishing off Irontomb, all's well ends well. But Herta reveals that Sirene must remain as a memory in the past. She cannot continue forward in the timeline because it will give the chance of Irontomb actually being reborn, giving the full meaning of a Mobius strip that is Amphoreus. Sirene must remain in this loop in the past to always be the Fuli of Amphoreus, which will continuously allow us to defeat Irontomb in this fashion. And they do hint at the possibility of Amphoreus becoming real in the future, but Sirene can never be a part of that. If she leaves the time loop, then some of the major events like Fuli giving us powers at the beginning and gazing upon us will have never happened, which will result in Irontomb actually becoming real. Again, it's a crazy irony that the scepter created Sirene, Phalia 093, that acts as the water for this seed that's the real child of remembrance. And this seed blossoms in the form of the person or being that scepter created that watered it all this time, feeding it memories. That's why Sirene and Sirene look the exact same, they're similar. One just resembles the other, but it grew and blossomed into a full child of remembrance. And if we keep trailblazing the way we do, and Sirene doesn't trap herself in the past, because she's connected to our memories now, our memories anchor her to the cosmos essentially. We have to leave her in the past. We can't bring her on the Trailblaze and continuing forward. She'll become Fuli, and it'll be the most docile finality the universe is on track for. Hence this whole trailer we got, I think it was like a week ago now, with Kafka revealing these possible endings and scripts. I think this is the first time in this entire game we got both main MCs, which was kind of crazy, like a crazy memory going on here. I'll have to investigate this further because I'm not sure what to make of this, but I wonder if this is two sides of the same coin. If the Finality and the Trailblazer are one and the same, maybe it depends on who you pick at the beginning of the game and one becomes the other. One representing the end, one the journey. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure of this scene, but I'll have to look into it further. Let me know in the comments what you think. Wouldn't it be funny if we select our main MC at the beginning of the game, they put a Stellaron in our body, and whoever we don't pick becomes Elio? Elio's just the other half of us, two sides to a coin? I don't know, it's so interesting of an Easter egg, just a small detail they threw in there. I've also had a lot of theories since Amphoreus dropped that Fuli doesn't exist, so that was kind of nice validation for me. I did however think Fäon would become a Lord Ravager and I was wrong about that. We'll talk about that at the end of the video, but I'll take a win where I can get one. I hope that clears up most of the Sirene stuff, because it was very convoluted. They did sort of drag it out way longer than it needed to and complicated it more than they needed to as well. But it's still pretty epic. Sirene is the gaze of Fuli that looks back on the world. The ones who pick up the pen and write miracles again and again. If you take all of Amphoreus, the 13 Flame Chasers, this whole synopsis of what this story is at the end when they're all placed in this book I have written, this is like a mini version. Actually, I shouldn't even say mini version. This is one version of Fuli that could have been and kind of demonstrates what they would do at the end of time. The entire purpose of Fuli of Remembrance is to save all the memories through their memo keepers so they can do exactly this. Rewrite the cosmos in the case of its destruction. I guess you could actually see this as what Fuli intends to do at the end of the timeline, with the memories it stores, but again it makes me wonder, each child that has the potential to become Fuli at the end, must they have their own unique way they get trapped in the past? If we keep preventing Fuli and one of these children to actually reach the end of the timeline and become Fuli, does this actually prolong the universe before its finality? Something we'll have to make theories about later on and explore later in the game, I suppose, with March 7th especially, since now we can confirm that she has the potential to be Fuli of Remembrance and is at the very least an Emanator level power if Sirene is, but also has qualities of the Enigmata. It just gives so much more meaning to us crying in this trailer because Sirene's connected to us in our journey forward as the Trailblaze. We kinda have to leave her behind in the past, which is sad. It's devastating. But at the end of the day, the Flame Chasers, these epic heroes created in a computer essentially, to act as its nourishment for extrapolations to perfect its destructive qualities, are able to stand up and defeat the very purpose they were created for. Defy their own fate, literally, as just a creation in a program. Really makes you wonder about Teyvat and Genshin Impact, doesn't it? And obviously so many Easter eggs paying homage to the Honkai Impact 3rd Flame Chasers right down to the ending of how this all ends, even Sirene using a bow and arrow. Irontomb was successful initially, but using the power of remembrance, combined with the Trailblaze, it undoes Irontomb's initial pulse, and a new variable for Nous has been born. Nous remaining silent, leaving the solution in the hands of the cosmos, starting a whole new variable, a whole new instant and benchmark moving forward, leaving everything now open-ended. We just played through one of the most significant, crazy events in the Honkai Star Rail timeline, We learn about all these crazy events like the Mechanical Wars, the Swarm Disaster, many years from now, in the Honkai Star Rail timeline. This will be an event talked about in the history books, one of the most major events to happen in the entire timeline. That is the significance of Amphoreus. I also love the cold irony too that Xandar won Kuwabara, well, Lygus, because Lygus is just one of 9 iterations of Xandar when he had to nerf himself, has to admit to himself, just like the Flame Chasers that are stuck in their fate, he too is bound by Xandar's fate and what he was created to do. Be the version of Xandar that wants to destroy his own creation of erudition at all costs. He doesn't have true free will and he can't even deny the irony. The prime mover of the universe and the first genius and the first to fail. Being a genius, being brilliant means you fail again and again. Lygus having a pretty deep, cruel story about the original Xandar wanting to do some tests, but it resulted in his mentor dying of cancer. How sentiment clashes with reason, and that Lygus is born from the latter. That's why Lygus' campaign was so bloody. Xandar had to remove the reason parts of himself, the empathy parts, the parts that actually would have resulted in him not doing whatever it took to kill Nous. That was his born mission after initially creating Nous and regretting it instantly, trapping the universe within a cave. And that's something I loved about this quest with Herta. We've heard so much about Herta in this game so far since this game dropped. One of the most exceptional, influential, important characters since day one. Not only did we get to see her live up to that reputation as an emanator of erudition, but we got to see just how much she cares and how much humanity she has. She even plans to recreate Amphoreus through the book I have written, potentially bringing back all the Flame Chasers, making them real. But she risked her life, did something even the other geniuses thought was crazy, and she rewrote Nous' instant, saving the universe as we know it. Instead of destroying Nous like Xandar wanted, she was able to change their calculation. And that really is the point of Honkai Star Rail if you ask me. The Eons are not the most exceptional beings in the universe. It's the people trying to leave the cave. Most of the Eons that we know were born probably from the extreme intelligence, passions, desires of living beings and humanity. Just look at Fäon. As just a mere creation and a scepter, look what he was able to do. Look at what Xandar 1 Kuwabara, the original, was able to accomplish. It set the universe in motion as we know it. Without Xandar creating Nous, the scepters and the mechanical wars would have never happened. And if that never happened, Amphoreus would have never been created and existed in the first place, which meant Sirene, who had the potential to be Fuli, would have never even existed. You can see the massive chain of events that have taken place. And this whole quest has been fascinating to me. Getting to see all the Chrysos heirs on the Astral Express was a bittersweet moment. They finally got to reach Era Nova, the end of this torment, and they all still exist within the book I have written. This scene here was so nice. It's like a nice send-off to these Chrysos heirs. All with their very unique personalities, they've all formed this bond over this suffering and these millions of cycles. As I've written officially comes to an end. And you gotta remember too, these 3 Trailblazers have been a part of this for thousands of years. That's how long they've experienced Amphoreus. They even make a joke about this, Welt, saying we might have to reshuffle the seniority ranking on the Express crew. Can we count the years you spent in Amphoreus? It's no different than being in the hyperbolic time chamber in Dragon Ball Z. Then we get the closeout with Sirene going through her journey, her past, how she got to this point. This part did feel a little dragged out to me, but it was also sad at the same time because, like Herta states, you have to remain trapped in the past now. And imagine how scary that would be. If Herta recreates Amphoreus, this Sirene that we know will not be a part of it. And this is a beautiful representation of what the Trailblaze and the Finality is all about. The beginning of the journey is actually the end. You can see her going backwards. This animated scene with the Chrysos heirs was beautiful. Then we get the end credits as usual, love to see it. And then finally it ends with us as Mem. Going through these doors, she runs into the Trailblazer and Dongheng initially arriving in Amphoreus, which brings us all the way back full circle. When March 7th was trapped in ice, we didn't know what was going on, Mem having no memory of anything, and she's going to do this all over again. She is going to live through what we just played through from 3.0 to 3.7 till the end of time, hypothetically. Being reborn as Sirene, defeating Irontomb, and doing this again and again. That is the significance of Amphoreus, an infinite loop of the 13th Flame Chaser, the unsung hero that will keep Irontomb imprisoned, never to be fully realized forever, allowing the cosmos and the trajectory of the universe to remain an unknown variable. And now Sirene exists only through what she is, a memory. And like I said, because she's now trapped in the past, it means she will always be there when we need her to be there as Fuli. And that is the end of Amphoreus as we know it. It's been a long, intense road to get here, and honestly, if I could summarize the entire story from 3.0 to 3.7, it was absolutely epic. Now overall, I love the ending of the story, I love this quest. I did however have some issues, and I'm not gonna just glaze completely because here were my problems. I do feel they kinda rushed and tried to jam-pack the Sirene story within this quest alone. It felt like it should have been fleshed out more previously. And then we could focus on Irontomb and that stuff. It felt like they had to jam that into this quest, which cut the Irontomb battle short, and that's my next problem. We didn't get to see the IPC, the Shenzhou Alliance, what they actually did. Planet Skrullum, we didn't get to see them at all. It felt the Irontomb battle happened so fast, and then we're jumping back into dialogue, walking around, talking to people. It just felt jarring. We've been building towards Irontomb for so long now. I would have liked to see this battle play out longer. Would have liked to see the struggles going on in space outside while we're battling Irontomb. Another problem I had in 3.7 was Fäon. 3.4 might go down as the greatest patch in this entire story arc. It's debatable, because Fäon is the most well-written character in this entire saga. And Herta is the unsung hero of 3.7. She was the best character. I was totally blown away and impressed with her character and what they had her do, but Fäon was the most well-written. Having to endure what he did, becoming who he became, challenging Nanook and Zephyro themselves, which apparently that actually happened. He actually fought a Lord Ravager. From my understanding, that wasn't just a simulation, that was real. He damaged Nanook, and his golden blood was given to the Shenzhou Alliance as a gift for helping, which was totally underwhelming. We didn't even get to see them help, and yet they get Fäon's golden blood? He is such a significant character, and I felt they were building towards something bigger. Herta did state in the space station after the quest you can talk to her. In the book I have written, she is coming up with a plan to recreate Amphoreus to be legitimate, like a real place, with these real heroes. Bring them to life. You can still talk to these heroes and they still exist through memory in the book and the story, so Fäon could return. Again, this just shows how much Herta actually cares outside just being a genius. She's not just one of these diabolical geniuses like the Lord of Silence, Dr. Primitive. She cares. She's not willing to destroy innocent lives for her research. On the contrary, she was willing to sacrifice herself to be one of the worst scenarios if it went wrong. But Fäon, they were building him so much to be the Lord Ravager that defies Nanook. Maybe that could still happen, and I'll talk about that in its own video. But it makes so much sense for him to be a Kazlana, a Kevin variant. To be a Lord Ravager born from Amphoreus in assimilation, to be the Lord Ravager that defies destruction itself. Because Fäon literally represents self-destruction, everything about him. He even states in this quest, and it's so sad, the only thing he knows how to do to fight destruction is with destruction. Fight fire with fire, that's all he knows to do, that's who he is. He's the destruction that we want because he destroys destruction. You probably noticed when fighting Irontomb, the Chrysos heirs call out their actual, like the Ocean Titan is Nihility, Strife is the Hunt, Death is Equilibrium, the Sky Titan is Preservation, so Fäon is quite literally the destruction. Earlier on in Amphoreus, I had so many theories that Fäon was Nanook. Like, this was an incubator frozen in time in this Mobius strip, incubating Nanook's actual origin. I was obviously wrong about that, but at the same time, Fäon being Nanook, them being one and the same, is not technically wrong. And Fäon gives us the best understanding of who and what Nanook truly is. Right at its core, Amphoreus is based on the real world of Honkai Star Rail. The Scepter was running tests based on everything in Honkai Star Rail. So in that sense, Fäon is Nanook in every conceivable way. They even look similar, they have similar characteristics, they are both the embodiment of self-destruction. So it's no wonder why not only Fäon got gazed by Nanook just being assimilated creation in a scepter, but actually damaged Nanook. In an interesting way, Nanook is looking in the mirror right now. And overall, I just hope they explore Fäon's character later on in the story somehow, bring him back, have him do something meaningful. If everything in the universe is meant to be destroyed, then that includes the Eon of Destruction. And I could think of no one better to carry that out than Fäon, a Kazlana, the Dawnbringer. And I felt they kind of sidelined him in this quest a little bit too fast and in a way I didn't necessarily like. Like, you cannot just sideline this character now for like a year or two. He's way too significant to me, he's too well written to leave him on the bench. Herta, make him real, put a Stellaron in him, do what you gotta do. This guy trapped in assimilation to become the destruction equation Irontomb needed, found a way to defy Amphoreus, trap Irontomb at 99% complete, and suffer until we arrived. Challenging Nanook themselves and damaging them, fighting a Lord Ravager, like you can't undermine this. Amphoreus really was the perfect incubator for Fäon, for Sirene and a lot of different variables, for the cosmos progressing forward now. So if they relegate Fäon now to being a prize, his golden blood to the Shenzhou Alliance when we didn't even see them do anything in this quest, yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit disappointed, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt since Fäon can return, according to what Herta's teasing us, so I guess I'll wait and see. But overall, those are some of my nitpicks. Overall, this entire saga was beautifully complicated, it was fun to talk about, make videos about, explore this whole journey from start to finish. I will look back at my time playing Amphoreus years from now and have such fond memories of it. Speculating what March 7th was, her connection here, Fäon, Lygus, the 3 eons connected to Amphoreus. There was just so many fun theories talking about Amphoreus and these epic flame chasers. I think this story was always going to be bittersweet, and I do think the flame chasers will have a bigger role to play sometime in the future of this story. We might need them again, and their resolve. We're not necessarily sure that Amphoreus is completely done since we got those credits. We've seen this before with a false ending. I'm sure they're gonna tie up some loose ends with Amphoreus proceeding to the next place we go, since the Constance of Dalia, one of Ifrit, Duke Inferno's children, who is pretty much all but confirmed to be a cremator, one of the rogue memo keepers, is going to be playable in 3.8. I'm sure she'll be able to actually investigate Amphoreus and we might learn something different, a different side to it. Actually, that could be completely interesting. We might learn something insane. It was also slightly teased in this quest that Aha of Elation might be the next major Eon wherever we go next. And Aha is my favorite Eon, so I cannot wait. I hope this is true. I honestly can't even begin to speculate what that's going to look like. It's just going to be an absolute shit show of jokes, pranks, and misdirection. I can't wait. And the IPC is going to sell back the vaccine from Irontomb at a discount price. How nice of them. They really are the villains that are the closest to the real world, aren't they? I'm not gonna lie, it did hit me in the feels at the very end of Amphoreus when Mem meets up with us again at the very beginning of 3.0. It brings me back to before Amphoreus dropped when we got that first trailer. In one of my older videos of Amphoreus, I talked about how it's going to be just a memory world in a giant loop. An epic story trapped, frozen in time. The beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning. And I think this is a mini foreshadow for a few things. One, the remembrance finality scenario. If Sirene were to become Fuli at the end of the timeline, the entire universe would be Amphoreus, from start to finish, trapped in a loop. But I also think Amphoreus kind of represents the path we're on, the finality and the Trailblaze being one and the same. The Trailblaze representing the start and the finality representing the finish. Kind of like what Nous was hinting at when talking with us. Amphoreus is meant to represent a smaller microscopic version of the entire actual Honkai Star Rail universe, and the story progresses in a similar way. Only this time we're on a journey with a Stellaron in our body, with the Stellaron hunters guiding the way for us, because this journey is obviously meant to be different than the ones we've been on before, and ultimately, This whole story, this chapter, was very similar to the Elysian Realm in Honkai Impact. It was very accurate to the source material. Some people might view that as lazy or a bad thing, but I have to disagree on this one. There are a lot of players that haven't played those games and never got to experience that. And for the ones who have experienced it or know about that story like myself, it was nice to see a similar concept but told in its own unique way in the Honkai Star Rail universe, with different characters, eons involved, and how they would progress. And overall, when the chips are down, I think they did a really great job. I also want to say that I'm sorry this recap took so long. I've been really busy at work, we're in a shutdown, so it's been harder for me to work on this, and my whole family's been sick, so there's been that as well. With that said though, I look forward to continuing on the Honkai Star Rail journey with all of you guys. I really appreciate all your guys' feedback, experiencing this story and game with me, watching my videos and recaps. I guess it's probably time for me to redo my Eons and Emanators videos probably pretty soon, I think. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.